And it's hard because the way that I feel about it now, the lack, what's the right way to say this? It's so difficult to trust the sources of our food supplies, like we've just discussed, that even when I hear the word organic, I'm like, how do you know? Like, how the fuck do you know whether, even if something's certified organic, like exactly what does that mean? Like, how do we know that they're doing the right thing? Like in my mind, it feels that the only way that you can really, unless you're growing all of your food yourself, which just, let's be honest, in this day and age, is just not realistic for the average person, is the only or the best way to, when you go to these markets, potentially speak to the farmers or actually speak to the people supplying your food, or try and find someone who you can speak to that can potentially verify where it's coming from and like how they're producing it and what chemicals they're using on it.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Is that the way?
I hope that we live in a world that if people are using those things, they'll at least be transparent about it. So
maybe the little guys.
That. Yeah. Also, a great sign is if there's a grower that has lots of produce that, they normally have like kind of a defective basket, or like you buy this bag and it's a lot cheaper because there's a few holes or nicks, basically that's more likely to be the healthier produce, because if it was affected by, if it doesn't look perfect, then it probably wasn't sprayed with a shit ton of chemicals. So kind of like looking for
okay, yeah.
Like
so it's better to find like a little nibble out of your apple or something.
Yeah, it's
like that sometimes.
Well, if a worm wanted to eat it, it's good enough for me. Wow. If no animal wants to eat my food, then I don't want to eat it. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
If like an insect or a bug or something won't go near it, you shouldn't go near it. In a perfect world. Again, like, I get it. We're all human.
I understand. Yeah. I mean, I know we're speaking in ideals right now, and if you could set up your perfect life and your perfect world, and you could dial everything in and have the perfect food process, then amazing. But even if you can't do all of these things, just something.
Yeah, like we said, even if it's just growing your herbs, or it's just once a month you do a big shop at a farmer's market that you can get to. Like, every little bit helps. Every little bit is helping support a better future, a better system. Every little bit is helping, your health. Like, even if you've just got a tiny little bit of, one room for one veggie patch, just even growing a few things.
Yeah.
Better for everything, better all around, but also even just makes you more in touch with your food and understand. You'll respect food and waste less food if you grow two things. I honestly believe that we would have way less food waste in this world if everyone just grew one thing. Because once you see how much love and time and effort goes into growing food, even if it's just a herb, even if it's just a tomato vine, even if it's just an zucchini, once you see that, I truly believe you just cannot waste food at the same degree.
Just because you're more in touch with the process.
Yeah, once you just see how much water, how much time, how much sunlight it needs, how long it takes, you will just have a better respect for food and all sorts and where it comes from. And, maybe when you go to the farmer's market, something's a little bit more expensive produce-wise, like cucumbers, they need so much water. Like, a cucumber's like 95% water. So much water goes into growing cucumbers. When I grow them, it's like I got to water this twice a day, or like they die. They need so much water.
Yeah, right.
Because it basically is just water. So then maybe when you're at the farmer's market and you see cucumbers and they're a little bit more expensive, you'll understand why, because so much went into growing that cucumber. So if everyone just grew a little bit, just something to understand how hard growing something is, I do believe the world would be a better place and we would have far less food waste.
I couldn't agree more. And I believe that diversifying where everybody gets their food is definitely going to create a way better future for us in Australia as well, because
and bringing community back. Like, it's, if you are nailing growing potatoes and you're just like the spud queen, then it's like, we don't need everyone growing a little bit. That's really hard. being able to grow a few things and nailing it, and then having that space to then seasonal. So say if you're just growing only in winter or only in spring or something, then the rest of the time you can be regenerating that soil. And then maybe your neighbor or your friend is, or your partner or your family member is growing something at a different time. So then your soil can sit and regenerate before you grow the next thing. And then you give them a bunch of potatoes and garlic, and then you get rhubarb off them.
And there are communal patches as well, right? Like there's actually quite a lot around, at least in Melbourne.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of communal patches where you can go and you can get your own little plot, even if it's something like the size of this table,
Yeah.
where you can plant some stuff and tend to it and share the load with other people. Once again, it does all take time, but
normally
we need it.
when you get it, it's like when something's growing, you get so many of that thing. Like when my zucchinis are hot, they're hot. Like you see how many flowers we've got on the vines outside.
Yeah.
When they're ready, we're going to have so many zucchinis.
Yeah.
So being able to share that, with our community, and then at another time, other people grow other things, they share it with us. Like I do believe that's, a key point to saving the future of our food.
And if everybody could just imagine if, I don't know how many people, but imagine if some portion of people diverted some of their buying to smaller growers and smaller suppliers, as opposed to getting it from big conglomerate companies, is going to have such a positive effect on the prices of food and the quality of food around the country. Like you said, voting with your dollar, I think when it comes to food, is one of the most important ways you can do it, because realistically one of the main reasons why food gets so expensive from these big stores is because they have the monopoly. Have the monopoly, and then they can begin choosing the price that works best for them for profit.
Yeah, and you saw it happen a few years ago with milk, cow's milk.
Yeah.
And there was the dollar milk, and basically we don't want any big corporation growing all our food.
We don't want a monopoly on our food.
No, that's a really scary place to be, by keeping small farmers and small businesses who grow food and sell food in business, even if they're more expensive than like big corporations like Woolworths and Coles and Aldi. Keeping them in business is saving money and the future, because if they all go out of business and we're relying on, just 1, 2, 3 big corporations to sell us our food, they can price it at anything they want. So the dollar milk, fiasco, when they were selling it for $1 and they were dicking their farmers and just like making no money off it. But the whole point is everyone was buying their milk at the supermarkets. So then every other farmer was going out of business, and then then if you could only get milk from a supermarket, then boom, they can charge you $25 for a carton of milk. So we don't want big corporations having this much control of our food, and the only way to do it is to support small businesses and grow our own. Because also, if we all grow our own, well then they won't ever have that pull over us. It's like, oh, well, fuck yeah, I'll just go grow my own. And I know space is limited and we're losing more and more of it, and apartments are going up and people are moving around. So if we can't grow our own, we need to support the small businesses that are. Because if they all go out of business, then the big corporations can charge whatever the fuck they want for their food. And we'd have no choice.
It's not you make such a good point, because it's not a good position to be in. Like it feels fine right now when we're not in a position where people need control necessarily over their own lives. Like everything's all good right now, or seemingly all good. So whether you have control over your own food doesn't really seem important, but there will come a time where food starts to become, or potentially this could happen, where food starts to become so expensive that it's taking up your whole paycheck, just like rent is doing.
Yeah.
And you're imprisoned essentially. Like if there's nowhere else to get food and there's only one place, then I mean, you got to eat, right? You got to eat, or you got to move country, or you got to move state, or you got to go to somewhere where there's cheaper food, basically. Or you've got to be prepared for the fact of you have no choice and you're spending whatever price they ask.
You're spending the money that they ask by no choice, but also you're eating the food that you have to buy, which
God, yes.
which then you don't have a say of what's in that. Like what we just talked about with the flour. It's like the government can start putting anything that they think that we should be getting in our diet, in our food, like they do with our water, like they're doing with our food already. And, you know, maybe it's a conversation for another day, but like all this shit might not be good for us.
It might not be.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
or even just from the fact that I want to, if it's good for me or not, I want to say of what goes into my body. And then the more food you're having to buy from big corporations, and if they're fully controlling, you know, the food source, then they can put in it whatever we want and we lose complete control. And just remember, nobody makes money if we're all healthy. Sick people make a lot of people money.
That is a really good point. That is a really good point. Oh, it's a fuck thing to look at, but it's good to know that little by little people can retake control over their own lives.
I don't have a lot of like positivity or hope in other areas, but this is something like I'm so passionate about that I really believe that a lot of people doing just a lot of small changes can make some mass change
for sure
to the world and our health. And I do believe that this isn't a lost cause.
Yeah, and
we're
I mean,
so far from that.
We're not far from.
Go to a farmer's market and you'll just be filled with so much fucking hope about food.
Exactly, yeah. When you don't go to those places and you don't look in the right areas, it can begin to seem hopeless. And, you know, some people feel differently about it. Some people want to stick their head in the sand and basically think that the water's perfectly healthy for us, there's nothing bad in it, and the food's perfectly healthy for us and there's nothing bad in it, and so on and so forth. But the reality is there's been time and time again now where I'm not saying every company, but a lot of the time it has been proven fact that there's been pesticides or chemicals put on plants, put on food that isn't good for humans.
Yeah.
And like that has been proved time and time again. So like it's no longer a conspiracy. And it's the same with water as well. Like we know we put certain things in the water to be able to, you know, for whatever reason, but keep the pipes clean, so on and so forth. We put things on water to maintain it. And we know that some of those things consumed in high quantities potentially isn't good for people, you know? So
we put things on our wheat and our corn, which then we harvest to feed our cattle. Yeah. So then that goes in it, and then you eat the cattle and the beef, and then you're consuming it that way. Or it rains and it all gets in our waterways, and then we're showering in it. It's raining. It's like it's everywhere.
And the reality is whether you believe in this stuff or not, or whether you've looked into it or not, the problem is, and I feel like every human would feel the same with this one, is as soon as you don't have control, you don't have a choice. So then you are purely relying on trust. And that's when I guess every person's got to ask themselves, and I'm trying to ask myself as well, do I 100% trust where I get everything that goes into my body and into my mind? You know, do I 100% trust it? And the reality is we live in a world where there's so many massive companies trying to make profit and do dodgy shit that it would be reasonable to say that you can have a certain level of doubt or distrust when it comes to big companies, because that's just how it goes. And the reality is the only way that you can have any choice over any of those things entering your mind or your body is to have some control. And the only way to have control is to be independent and know these sources. And the only way to be independent is taking some of this production and intelligence and information about where to source things from into your own hands. And I guess the reality is right now the only way we can do that is becoming a little bit more educated. It's just we don't live in a world where you can just close your eyes and just buy stuff from people and expect it to be all good. Sometimes you can. A lot of the time you can, but there's some times where you really can't. And if you don't have the information or the education, I barely do, you really don't know and you've got no control.
And like cooking, yeah, like so perfectly said. And cooking from scratch has so many benefits in so many different areas that for me, it's like it's an easy win. Like if you want to do something good for your health, the planet, your wallet, your mental state, like, you know, cooking can be a therapy. It can be a form of mindfulness. It can be a form of It can be a meditative experience. It's like we need to eat. So it's like if you can get all that from something that you have to do kind of, you know, once a day at a minimum anyway, then like it's an easy win.
Yeah, like if you got to eat, you got to eat anyway.
Yeah, so it's like if you want to do something good for your health and the environment and save some money, it's like we got to eat anyway. So for me, it's like this would be the best place to start to just improve quality of life and quality of the world. And you got to do it anyway. And so like this is like the fundamental like reasons why we do what we do at Elise Alexandra is because we want to be a source to make cooking from scratch so easy and enjoyable, but also fucking tasty and delicious, because that's how it will be ongoing and it'll become like a habit and a passion and a desire is like the food's got to be good.